how an incredible 72-hour wait in the rain led to an unexpected family transformation. The storm clouds rolled in like a shroud, heavy with the weight of 1,000 unfinished dreams. Sarah stood before the community center, heart pounding against her ribcage, the fists of wind battering her resolve. This wasn't just a lottery for her 10-year-old son Tyler. It was a chance to break free from the shackles of their fractured legacy, a shot at a summer camp that could ignite a spark of hope for a bright future, and she was ready to fight for it. As the rain began to fall, Sarah anchored herself to the pavement. She could hear the murmurs and scoffs from neighbors, judgment dripping as heavily as the rain. "Look at her again," they whispered. "Does she think this will change anything?" But Sarah pushed the doubts away, focusing instead on Tyler's wide-eyed delight when he heard about the camp. This was her moment to turn their lives around, to show him that even in the heart of struggle, resilience could bloom. Hours turned into days as the storm raged. Each night, it felt like she was battling against the wind, hurtling back to the memories that suffocated her spirit. But in the trenches of her lonely vigil, she discovered unexpected companions, those who shared her dream, each story whispering solidarity through the torrential downpour. A single dad competing against the odds for his son's future. A retired teacher hoping to inspire a new generation. They formed a makeshift family in the cramped space of their shared ambition, wrapped in the warmth of understanding. But as the storm grew fiercer, so did the simmering resentments from the past. Sarah's father, a cold figure who wore his veteran badge like a shield, arrived holding his own burdens. The sight of him stirred old wounds, igniting arguments that flew from their lips like lightning strikes. "You never wanted me," she shouted, the truth simmering through each word. "You don't understand sacrifice," he roared back, and the thunder clapped above as if echoing the fracture between them. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. Just when the seams of her determination began to fray, a startling discovery shook her deeply. As she rummaged through her father's old army bag in a fit of frustration, crumpled letters slipped out. Words she had never heard before, drenched in regret and sacrifice, merged with ink blotches of stories untold. Her perception of resilience began to shift. Perhaps her father, with his cold judgments, carried shadows through each oppressive storm that she had never noticed. With each letter, the air around them thickened with unspoken love. As the rain fell heavier, soaking their shoes and hearts alike, Sarah realized the time for walls was over. Vulnerability was the missing piece to their lives, the way toward not only a ticket to Tyler's dreams, but also a chance to mend the fragile strings of family in their little world. As the thunder continued to rumble ominously, she dared to look deep into her father's eyes for the first time in years, asking if they could find a way to break the cycle of resentment and instead weave a new dream together. The moment was teetering, the ticket distribution closing in fast. The storm might just be the beginning of their transformation, but could they let go of the past before the clouds cleared? The answer lay in the heart of the impending tempest, waiting to be unveiled. The storm raged on, filling the air with electric anticipation. Sarah stood at the precipice of a battle she had fought long before the rain ever fell. She took a breath, drawing in the damp air that mingled with the scent of earth and hope. The moment hung in the balance, her father's eyes meeting hers in a way they never had before, raw, unguarded. "Can we talk?" she asked, her voice steadying with each syllable. It wasn't just the words that mattered now, it was the vulnerability sliding into the spaces between them, weaving a thread of understanding she never thought possible. He stared back, the weight of years of silence pressed heavily upon him. "You don't know what I've been through," he finally murmured, but his voice wavered. The thunder rolled, almost like it was urging him to continue. "Then tell me," she urged, feeling the urgency swell. "I want to understand. I want us to understand each other." A flicker crossed his face, and for a moment it looked like the storm was less about the rain and more about the truths waiting to pour out. "I did what I thought was best for you," he replied, his voice thick with emotion. "But I see now I may not have shown it properly." As Sarah listened, the walls that had fortified her heart began to erode. Each word her father spoke was a pebble dropped into a vast ocean of pain, rippling toward an awakening. Here was a man whose own storm had not yet broken, just like hers. Around them, the murmurs from the crowd blurred into the background, each drop of rain an accompaniment to their revelation. Scores of eyes were silently observing, but in that moment it didn't matter. Tyler's future relied on this exchange more than on any ticket they hoped to win. Just when she thought she could breathe again, a rival family member from farther down the line stepped forward, a mother, face set in a mask of determination. "This isn't just about families," she shouted. "It's about who deserves it. Your son's not the only one with dreams." The jeers from others echoed a familiar kind of disdain that took Sarah back to her childhood, cloaked in memories of competition over love and approval. "Wait," she interjected, her voice slicing through the storm. "If we're fighting against each other, what kind of lesson are we teaching our kids? This should be about lifting them up, not tearing each other down." Responses rippled through the crowd, some nodding in grudging agreement, while others rolled their eyes. The tension felt palpable, electric. Sarah could see her father clenching his jaw, the battle raging within him. They were all fractured, fighting their own storms. But could they let go of the bitter weight they clung to? Sarah turned back to her father, and taking his hands in hers, she made a promise. "Let's be better, for Tyler, for all of us." In that moment, she felt a flicker of hope breaking through the clouds, a fleeting glimpse of the sun that would one day welcome them all. Just then, a shout broke her reverie. 3 minutes to ticket distribution! The urgency of the announcement cut through their fragile moment. Would they seize the opportunity now laid before them, or let the clouds of doubt disperse them once again? As the storm raged around them, the choice hung like a pendulum, waiting for the decisive swing. What could happen next for their family, and would courage triumph over the past? The countdown felt surreal, like time was both racing and standing still. 3 minutes. Sarah's heart hammered against her chest, a frantic drum echoing the storm's fury. She gripped her father's hands tighter, the warmth between them creating a tether against the chaos that surrounded them. "Are you with me?" she asked, searching his gaze for a flicker of resolve. He nodded, but uncertainty lingered in his eyes. I want to be. I just don't know how." Outside their fragile bubble of connection, the crowd began to shift. The once scattered families now formed a single line, some whispering heated debates about who deserved a chance more. Empathy hung in the air, thick and sticky, as Sarah observed the clashing emotions mirrored in the faces around her: worry, hope, desperation. In those fleeting moments, she understood that this wasn't merely about winning a ticket. It was about rebuilding what had been broken long ago. It was about the childhood she never had, the father she'd craved, and a bond desperately needing healing. "That's just it," she began, her voice steady despite the brewing storm. "We can't just talk about change. We need to act, together. Let's show everyone here that families don't have to fight each other to be strong." As she spoke, her passion ignited something in the crowd. Somewhere in the back, she saw a young boy with a hopeful expression staring up at his mother. "Mom, can we do that?" he asked in a soft voice, holding tightly to her hand. The mother faltered, the anger seeming to drain away. "Yes, honey, I think we can." With her words, the tension lightened. Sarah watched as another mom smiled, recalling her own struggles in the face of parenting. It was a small shift, but a shift nonetheless. A ripple of understanding began to spread, enveloping the families in the line. "Let's bring our kids up, not tear each other down," Sarah called again, and this time her voice rang clearer, almost triumphant. "If we can embrace our shared dreams, then our children will learn to support each other. They'll grow to be stronger together instead of apart." The raindrops began to ease, falling gentle instead of hard, as if the universe itself was listening. She felt the shift in the air. It began with her father, but now it extended to the assembly of families gathered in this moment. Within seconds, a young man standing at the front raised his voice. "You're right. We're all chasing a dream. Why not support each other instead of competing?" From the corners of the crowd, cheers and applause erupted. Each voice fed off another, turning their collective anxiety into a growing sense of unity. Sarah's heart swelled. This battle might not be just hers and her father's. It could be a whole community's, fighting together against the storms that tried to separate them. 3, 2, 1. The announcer's countdown shocked them back into focus. The tension snapped like a taut string, and everyone braced for the rush. As the chaos unfurled, Sarah squeezed her father's hands one last time. "Promise me we'll keep pushing for this," she said fiercely, her spirit igniting. He nodded, a deeper understanding dawning in his gaze, one that showed he was finally ready to fight, not just for tickets, but for connection. And as they surged forward, a sudden thought struck Sarah. What if this was the beginning of a larger journey? What if this stormy day could lead to even more revelations about their family? The tickets were just a symbol of something bigger, and for the first time, she felt ready to face whatever lay ahead. But as they pushed through the crowd, a loud voice called out, "Stop! We have a problem!" The storm wasn't over yet, and challenges still loomed ahead. The crowd froze, confusion written across every face. "What do you mean a problem?" someone at the front shouted, eyebrows knitted together in apprehension. The announcer, a tall man with disheveled hair and a speaker clutched tightly in his hand, stepped forward. "Due to unexpected technical difficulties, the ticket distribution has been delayed. We're going to need everyone to remain calm and—" He was cut off by a murmur of discontent. Sarah felt the ripple of frustration wash over the group like a wave. She met her father's gaze, and even in the chaos, she tried to communicate reassurance. This was a moment of truth, and they needed to harness the energy swirling around them. "Listen," Sarah raised her voice above the surge of frustration. "This is hard for all of us. We've waited too long and given too much to let this tear us apart." A woman in the crowd turned around, her cheeks wet with tears. "What's the point if they keep playing games with our lives? We're just pawns to them." Sarah's heart ached for the lost hope shining in that woman's eyes. "I get it. We've all been hurt. But what if we use this time, this moment, to rethink how we move forward? It doesn't have to be just about tickets. What if it's about us, about our families coming together?" An older gentleman spoke up now, his voice steady. "She's right. Maybe we need to breathe and talk about why we're really here." The murmurs began to shift again, this time towards a more thoughtful tone, as members of the crowd considered the possibility. "Every person here feels the weight of this storm," Sarah continued, emboldened by the shift. "Let's use this delay to connect, share our stories. You never know who might understand you, who might inspire you." She felt her father's hand tighten around hers, and he stepped forward alongside her. "I've spent too long lost in my own struggles," he admitted, his voice slightly trembling. "I thought I could handle it alone, but I realize now that strength lies in togetherness." Slowly, one by one, families began to step forward and share their stories of hope, hardship, and healing. A father spoke of losing his job and fearing for his children's future. A mother shared how she moved her family across the country for a fresh start. With each voice, the heaviness of despair lifted, replaced by solidarity and understanding. As Sarah listened, she couldn't help but notice how the storm outside, once a foreboding presence, had now become a backdrop of resilience. The dark clouds above didn't seem as threatening anymore. Instead, they symbolized the trials they all faced together. Then, amid the tide of voices, a young girl caught Sarah's attention. She had been standing at the very front, clutching a colorful drawing of a family, and looked up with wide, hopeful eyes. "Can we really be a family, like in my picture?" she asked, her innocence breaking through the weight of the moment. And suddenly, something inside Sarah clicked. "Yes," she exclaimed, joy bubbling out of her voice. "Look, each one of us here is a piece of a much bigger picture. We can be the family we want to be through this." The power of those words hung in the air like electricity. Sarah's father smiled, and she could see light glimmering in the eyes of those around them. But just as hope seemed to burst forth, the announcer interrupted again. "I hate to break this up, but we have big news." "About the tickets?" Anxieties tightened the air once more, overshadowing their newfound unity. What could this mean? Would it be another blow, or the answer they hoped for? As Sarah braced herself, she could feel the pulse of possibility crisscrossing through the crowd, leaving everyone hanging on the precipice of what was to come. Would they navigate this twist together, or would the uncertainty push them apart once more? The crowd held its breath, eyes darting from the announcer to Sarah and back again. A tense silence engulfed the space, and the once unified energy began to crack under the pressure of uncertainty. Sarah could feel her heart thrumming in her chest, her palms damp against her father's grip. The announcer cleared his throat, his face a mixture of eagerness and trepidation. "We've experienced unforeseen challenges," he paused, glancing at the restless crowd, "but we're ready to proceed with ticket distribution." Hushed relief washed over some, but Sarah saw doubt flicker in the eyes of many around her. "What does that mean for us?" someone shouted from the back. The question hung in the air, heavy with skepticism. The announcer shifted, brows furrowing. "We've had to make some adjustments." He paused, glancing at the restless crowd. "But we're ready to proceed with ticket distribution." Hushed relief washed over some, but Sarah saw doubt flicker in the eyes of many around her. "What does that mean for us?" someone shouted from the back. The question hung in the air, heavy with skepticism. The announcer shifted, brows furrowing. "We've had to make some adjustments. Instead of a simple distribution, we'll be selecting families through a lottery process." A wave of groans erupted from the crowd, and Sarah could see hope dimming in the faces that had just started to glow with connection. It was as if the clouds above were mirroring the sentiment below, darkening once more. She stepped forward again, her voice rising above the tumult. "Wait, just because it's a lottery doesn't mean we can't figure out how to lead on each other. We shared our stories, now let's figure out how we can support one another through this." Around her, some nodded in agreement, yet fear still lingered like a specter. "Sorry, but how do we do that?" a man from the edge of the crowd challenged. "We might not even get tickets." "Exactly," Sarah shot back. "Some of us might not get tickets at all, but what if we pool our chances, share information, help those with the odds stacked lower?" A brief silence enveloped the crowd again, akin to the pause before a storm. Then a young couple stepped forward, hands interlinked, eager expressions on their faces. "We've been waiting for this day too, and we'd love to help." Their courage sparked something within the crowd. Other families began stepping up, forming small clusters of connection, discussing their strategies, sharing thoughts on how they could aid one another through the uncertainty. Then, suddenly, the young girl with the drawing called out, her voice small but steady. "I don't want the waiting to tear us apart. Can't we be a family for real?" A quiet murmur of agreement rippled through the air. Sarah's heart tugged in response. Screaming past the noise of worries, she called out, "Yes, whatever happens next, let's keep this spirit alive. United or not, we can still be a family." As if ignited by her words, members of the community began proclaiming how they could support one another, regardless of the ticket outcome, forging bonds that were deeper than any lottery. Sarah observed, tears prickling her eyes, as anger slowly melted into compassion. Families swapped details, vowed to meet again, or promised to cheer each other on, even if luck didn't land in their favor. Yet, as hope rekindled, the announcer barked another update. "We'll be announcing numbers in 10 minutes. Everyone, prepare for the draw." An anxious ripple sliced through the crowd again, the fear of disappointment looming large amidst newfound connections. Sarah's breath quickened. Every heartbeat echoed her concern. Could they keep this moment alive when faced with disappointment? The crowd quieted again, eyes locked on the announcer. Would this transformation hold, or would their fleeting connection unravel at the first sign of disappointment? As names began to be called out, a question floated through Sarah's mind like a whisper. Would their newfound unity withstand the test of fate, or was this the beginning of an unexpected unraveling? The announcer's voice boomed through the tense air, each name slicing into the crowd like a knife. Sarah's heart raced as the first few families were called. Hands clenched, she felt her father's grip tighten beside her. He wore a mask of stoicism, but Sarah could sense the silent fear bubbling beneath his calm facade. As names rolled off the announcer's tongue, she noticed parents exhaling in relief, while others stood frozen, their faces pale. Every name carried weight, the chance of hope and despair. The young couple who had stood up earlier hugged tightly as they heard their name. Joy flickered across their faces, igniting a wave of clapping and cheers around them. But for Sarah, the cheers felt like distant echoes against the gnawing anxiety that tightened her chest. Then came the dreaded moment. The announcer paused, taking a breath that seemed to echo in the silence. And now, the last name of this round. He glanced at the list, and Sarah held her breath. An icy fear crept through her veins. Would they hear their name? Would they even be able to share in the joy their newfound community had begun to forge? Now, as he spoke the name, it rang out like a death knell, a name she didn't recognize. And then another, and another. As the call continued, her resolve began to slip. She felt small and insignificant, a drop in the ocean of disappointment. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the announcer paused and glanced at the crowd. And that concludes this round. A collective sigh of disbelief washed over the crowd. Families blinked in shock, absorbing the reality that many would go home empty-handed. Sarah's heart sank, the initial hope shattered, hanging on the precipice of despair. Suddenly, she recalled the young girl's words, "Can't we be a family for real?" It echoed inside her mind, pushing her to take a step forward. She faced the crowd, viewing the sea of faces. Some were gripped by sorrow, others anger. And yet, glimmers of solidarity sparked in their eyes. "Hey!" Her voice broke through the silence, wavering but filled with a determination she wasn't sure she possessed. "What if this moment defines us? The choice is ours. We can crumble under the weight of disappointment or rise together stronger. We've started something beautiful today, and it doesn't have to end here." A man from the back of the crowd started clapping. Others quickly joined in. The applause erupted, not as a celebration of the announced names, but as a show of support for those left standing without an essential piece of paper. Brought back to life, families began to rally around one another, offering hugs, kind words, and shared tears. The little girl with the drawing, once shy, clapped her hands, her voice ringing out. We can still create something great together. We're family. Minutes passed as they embraced, whispered promises of support, and vowed to keep the community they had formed alive. Tears mixed with laughter, threads of unity binding them tighter than any ticket they hadn't received. Yet, amid the connections forged, Sarah felt the familiar stir of uncertainty. Would this unity hold against the challenges that lay ahead? And what about the families who hadn't been called? Would that pain rip them apart once again? As the crowd began to settle, she cast a glance upward into the overcast sky. It felt like a test, an echo of the emotions swirling within her. What would happen next? The community they built was fragile, but also resilient. And as she turned back, she found herself standing in front of a familiar, tear-streaked face. It was the young couple, their joy tamed by concern, asking the very question that loomed over Sarah like a storm. What now, Sarah? The weight of their shared reality crashed over her, and she realized this was just the beginning of their story. But the next chapter could lead to an unraveling or a newfound strength. How could she guide them through the uncertainty? The atmosphere hung heavy with unresolved emotions. Sarah looked into the eyes of the young couple, their hopeful innocence now shrouded by worry. "We figure this out together," she replied, though her voice trembled with uncertainty. A few families began to gather around, drawn to the palpable sense of camaraderie. Like the scattered pieces of a puzzle, they came closer, sharing their stories of loss, grief, and unexpected connections. Each tale was raw and real, a tapestry woven with threads of shared pain and fading hope. The young woman from the couple, her name was Emma, stepped forward. "We need a plan," she said, her voice steadying. "If so many are in this together, let's find a way to help each other." "Like what?" a man chimed in, his brow furrowed with concern. "What do we do when we feel so lost?" Sarah felt the familiar flutter of anxiety in her stomach, but she pressed on. "What about a meeting? We can share resources, help each other with forms, arrange childcare for those who have kids." It sounded simple, but she knew it required commitment. "We can meet at the park," Emma suggested, her eyes lighting up. "Go for a picnic-style gathering. Each family brings something, just a space to be together and connect." The murmurs of agreement grew louder. Sarah felt the heat rise in her cheeks as she looked around. Here were people who could just as easily turn away, but instead they were leaning in, ready to dive into the unknown together. "Not just families," another voice spoke, this time an older gentleman with a kind smile. "Let's invite others too, neighbors, friends, anyone willing to join our cause." The energy shifted, hope blossomed. Plans began to swirl around them like leaves in a gentle breeze. Names were exchanged, tentative connections solidified. Each step forward felt like a stitch reinforcing the fabric of their little community. As they finalized the details, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose. The uncertainty that had weighed so heavily on her heart lightened, though doubt still lingered. How could they hold on to this spark amid the storms of their lives? Just then, a soft voice broke her reflection. It was the little girl again, peering up at Sarah with innocent eyes. "Will we all be together, like a real family?" Tears prickled at the corners of Sarah's eyes. It hit her then. What they were creating wasn't just a support group. It was a new kind of family, forged in the trials of the moment. A family of hearts intertwining. "We will," she replied, her voice steady this time, "as long as we keep showing up for each other." Hours later, as the sun began to lower in the sky, painting everything golden, families started to disperse. Sarah felt a sense of urgency as she watched them go. She had never imagined how a simple call of names could lead to this tremendous shift in so many lives. Yet each step away felt like a painful separation from a piece of herself she had just begun to understand. As her father stepped up beside her, he whispered, "This may be your calling, Sarah." His words enveloped her in warmth despite the chilly afternoon air. What stood in the path now was both thrilling and terrifying. The upcoming gathering brought excitement, but she also wondered about the challenges ahead. Would they remain strong against the world outside their makeshift family? Would they be ready to face whatever storms came next? The thought of the park meeting hung in the air, heavy with promise yet tinged with fear. But deep down, a question burned bright. What if this fragile community could turn into something even greater than their individual hopes? As Sarah turned toward her father, uncertainty shadowed her resolve, igniting her spirit. Could they truly become a family for real? Holding on to hope is just the beginning, she murmured, catching her breath. But will it be enough for what lies ahead? The days leading up to the picnic felt like a whirlwind. Sarah found herself at her kitchen table, scribbling notes and ideas on scraps of paper. Lists were scattered across the surface, things to bring, names to remember, connections to cultivate. Each scribble echoed the same thought, looping in her mind. This could work. This could truly become something special. Emma called frequently, buzzing with excitement. I talked to Mrs. Phillips from down the street. She's bringing her famous potato salad. Each mention of a dish strengthened the tapestry they were weaving. It was about comfort food and familiar faces, but it was also about possibility, filling the plate with hope instead of despair. As the day approached, Sarah's father became a quiet, constant presence. "You're excited, aren't you?" he asked one afternoon, watching her pace. "I am," she replied, even though doubt clung to her like a heavy cloak. Could a moment shared over food really bind hearts together? The morning of the picnic dawned bright and clear. Birds chirped outside, and sunlight filtered through the kitchen window, spilling warmth across the floor. Sarah arrived at the park early, her heart racing with anticipation. She unpacked a bag of sandwiches and a container of cookies, organizing everything neatly on a borrowed blanket. Slowly, families trickled in. Parents and children waved with smiles that seemed to lighten the shadows they all carried. Laughter began to fill the empty spaces. Sarah watched as they shared stories, and she could see the burdens lift, if only for a moment. Emma animatedly showed up with not just her potato salad, but an entourage of families, each offering something of their own to the table. "Can you imagine," Emma said, her eyes bright, "if we all brought together what we had, we could be so much stronger." "Like a potluck for the soul," Sarah replied, a smile breaking through uncertainty. The gleam in Emma's eyes reflected a conviction that sparked a fire in Sarah's own heart. The air was thick with flavors and stories, and laughter danced like the leaves in the gentle breeze. They sat in a circle, their makeshift family, sharing not just food, but hopes, fears, and dreams. The little girl who had asked about family had become a vibrant spirit of joy, weaving in and out among the gathered adults, playfully arranging plates and mysteriously disappearing with leftover cookies. Yet as the sun began to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the grass, Sarah's heart fluttered with a pang of worry. What if everything they were building frayed at the edges in the light of reality? Would tomorrow's uncertainties snuff out the connections forged today? "Let's make a pact," Sarah suggested as the chatter began to fade, "to meet here every week, no matter what, rain or shine. We can keep this going." The group murmured in agreement, and she could see the flicker of hope igniting in each pair of eyes, a collective realization that they were truly in this together. But just as she was overwhelmed with emotion, a sudden downpour caught them off guard. Rain fell like an unexpected curtain, soaking the blanket and everyone amidst joyous laughter. They scrambled to gather belongings, screaming over the cacophony of raindrops. Still in the chaos, Sarah saw it. The families huddled close, laughing under the trees, sheltering each other. Even as the storm raged, they stayed, united, refusing to be washed away. As they made their way to their cars, soaked but smiling, Sarah felt a spark of something that hadn't been there before. A family formed not by blood, but by choice, resilience, and commitment. "Next time we'll be more prepared," someone joked, and they all laughed together. But Sarah's mind wandered to the future. What storms would they face together? Would they remain this tight-knit family through the challenges ahead, or would the rain wash them apart? The exhilaration of the day settled in her chest, and as she waved goodbye to the last car pulling away, a haunting question lingered in the air. What would it take to truly hold this community together when the next storm arrived? Exhausted, yet invigorated, Sarah knew one thing. It was just the beginning. The week after the picnic flew by, each day wrapping around Sarah like a warm blanket. The laughter, the camaraderie, even the unexpected rain lingered in her thoughts. She couldn't shake the feeling that they had crossed a threshold, that something profound had shifted in the way they all saw each other and themselves. Early Saturday morning, Sarah checked her phone for messages. Emma had texted, bubbling with excitement about an idea. "What if we each share a story about our week at our next picnic? It'll bring us even closer." Sarah smiled, sensing the energy from Emma's enthusiasm. It was just what she needed to keep the momentum alive. As afternoon crept closer, a slight nervousness wrapped around Sarah. What if not everyone felt the same way about meeting again? The thought sent a ripple of doubt through her. But they had made a pact. It was now time to honor it. Arriving at the park, she noticed families already gathered, children running around, echoing the laughter from their last encounter. This time, the sky was an unblemished blue canvas, a stark contrast to the previous week. That rain, though chaotic, had sewn them together in ways they hadn't anticipated. As she laid out the blanket again, excitement surged through her. Emma was the first to arrive, her orange cooler on one arm and a bright sun hat perched atop her head. "I can't wait to hear what stories everyone has this time," she exclaimed. Sarah felt warmth bloom in her chest. Every moment spent organizing had led to this new energy, a flicker of hope in their budding community. Families strolled in with dishes, laughter, and inquiring minds. A man Sarah hardly recognized approached her with a smile. "Hey, Sarah, I brought my famous chili. Thought I'd give it a shot." "Thank you. That sounds amazing." As she welcomed each family, exchanging familiar faces for deeper connections, Sarah felt her heart swell. The space began to fill with comforting aromas, and familiarity wrapped around them like a favorite sweater. As they gathered on the blanket, Sarah found herself looking at them more intently, aware they were sharing something bigger than food. There was an undercurrent of trust as they began to share their stories, some light and funny, others raw with emotion. "I lost my job last month," a woman admitted softly, "but it brought me closer to my family. We learned to lean on each other." The group fell silent, nodding thoughtfully. Just as a heart-melting story about a cat circus broke the somber mood, Sarah's phone buzzed, breaking her attention. It was a notification. Something about the park's community board had posted about upcoming volunteer opportunities. An idea sparked in her mind. "Let's keep this going. We need to support the park and each other," she blurted out, her pulse quickening. Emma's eyes lit up, and the group began discussing which projects they could tackle together. Hope bubbled within them, strengthening those first fragile threads of connection forged in the rain. Yet, amidst the laughter and excitement, Sarah couldn't shake the question that bubbled beneath the surface. What would happen when tough times met this newfound resolve? Would they still gather under the gray clouds together, or hide away in the corners of their homes when the next storm arrived? As the sun began to lower, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, Sarah glanced around, taking in the smiling faces and newfound connections. This wasn't just a gathering for food anymore. It was shaping into something much deeper. "Let's take on whatever comes next, together, no matter what," she said, her voice firm yet warm. They all nodded, yet a hint of apprehension danced in the air. But in that moment, it felt right. They had built something beautiful. Now it was time to see what challenges lay ahead. And just as Sarah felt the weight of their transformation settle in, a distant rumble echoed in the skies. Thunder? Or just her racing heart? Whatever it was, it meant they might face another storm before too long. And this time, they wouldn't just be gathered to weather it. They were ready to fight for their togetherness. Would their bonds prove strong enough, or would the clouds drift apart and take the warmth with them? The sky above turned an ominous gray, heavy and foreboding, as Sarah gathered her makeshift family for what felt like the defining moment of their journey. Today was not just about another picnic. It was about putting their commitment to the test against the storm brewing on the horizon. Her heart raced as she thought about everything they had built since that first rainy day standing in line for tickets. There had been growth, unity, and an undeniable sense of purpose. Today, we show everyone that we're more than just a group of families. We are a community, Sarah called, her voice steady as she addressed the gathering crowd. Grinning faces looked back at her, a sea of hope intertwined with a thread of anxiety. They were clumped close together, children running and laughing, parents leaning into one another, creating that familiar warmth forged in vulnerability and connection. As they settled on a blanket laid out in the park, Sarah could see Emma and the young couple, their eyes sparkling with anticipation. It felt electric, charged with something greater than themselves. She felt a swell of pride as families began to share their stories, laughter interweaving with deeper revelations. "Last week's chili brought my family together, but the real spice came from sharing our thoughts," one father stated, his voice filled with mirth. Laughter erupted, though underneath it lay the thread of sincerity. This was more than a meal. This was perseverance through darkness. But Sarah also sensed the tension beneath the surface. The storm looming above was really about to make its presence felt. The whispers murmured of fears, of past challenges that had cracked their foundations. A rumble of thunder echoed from a distance. Sarah felt a shiver pass through, but she pushed aside doubt. "No matter what comes, remember our bond," she reminded them. "We're not just here for today, we're here for all the tomorrows." The sky darkened as raindrops began to pelt down. The suddenness of it took some families by surprise, creating a flurry of scrambling and laughter. Within moments, everyone huddled under nearby trees, pulling together umbrellas and blankets while finding joy in chaos. "See, we can handle this," Emma shouted over the clatter of rain against leaves. The laughter rang vibrant, a testament to their resilience against nature's whims. However, amidst the joy, Sarah had a bittersweet realization. As raindrops fell, she wondered whether the strength they had built could withstand true trials when the sky turned menacing. Another rumble of thunder sent a shock through the crowd, the laughter faltering slightly as fear crept in. "Maybe it's time we shared not just our joys, but also our fears," she suggested, her heart pounding. "Let's each tell a story about a struggle we faced, how we overcame it, or what we still need help with." As the rain poured down, families shared their tears and triumphs, breaking open their hearts in a way that made the air feel heavier. A mother spoke of losing her job and the guilt that came with it, while another shared her pain of being a single parent juggling too many roles. As they opened up, something remarkable happened. Fear transformed into solidarity. With each story, they inched closer together, understanding that they were not alone in their struggles. Defining moments aren't just born from victories, Sarah concluded. They come from showing up for each other when it matters most. The sun broke through dark clouds, casting a golden glow across the drenched park, and laughter erupted once more. They had weathered the storm together, and it felt like a turning point, a bold declaration of unity. "From this day forward," Sarah called out, her voice piercing through the fading rain, "we're more than friends, we're family, and we won't just survive. Together, we'll thrive. We'll support each other in ways that extend beyond these boundaries." As they raised their voices in cheer, Sarah watched as her father stood, tears streaming down his face. He stepped forward, enveloping her with a hug, the walls of misunderstanding finally crumbling. "We've done something beautiful," he murmured against her ear, his voice thick. "You've shown me what it truly means to be brave." In that moment, surrounded by faces full of hope, Sarah finally understood that each growth, each connection forged, was not merely a reaction to hardship. It was the armor for whatever storms lay ahead. And together they would face them head on. "Let's go home," she said, a radiant smile breaking across her face, "and get ready for the next adventure." As they packed up their blankets amidst giggles and newfound resilience, Sarah realized that whatever lay ahead, they were bound not just by dreams, but by a family forged through every storm, every drop of rain. And as the sun set in a blaze of fiery orange and soft pink, she took a deep breath, filled with a sense of possibility. This was only the beginning, and together they were unstoppable. You need to subscribe now to follow along on this incredible journey of transformation. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure you never miss a story that could inspire you. Comment below with your reactions and feelings about this ending. And remember to share instantly this experience with at least 5 friends who need to see how love and connection can thrive in difficult times. Don't wait, not even one more second. Together, we're all in this together.